Hey everybody, welcome in. We are here with our first official speed build for Once Human. We're going to be working on a pool today, so if you're looking for some tips and tricks when it comes to building, this is the place to be. But before we get into the video, make sure that you go and click that subscribe button. I am currently working on building this channel, and any support would be greatly appreciated. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the build video. So we are going to be watching a sped up video because I yap a lot and I'm a very slow builder. But here we're talking about basics of building a pool and basics of building in general. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to start with a big flat area. So you can see we started with a big rectangle here. And right now we honestly have a pool. You could swim, you could have a little pool party, have your friends over. But what we're going to start doing is we're going to do a little trick that I like to utilize a lot when I build, and it's just deleting and adding. So you start with a base and you just slowly delete and add different items depending on what your goal is. So we started with that rectangle, changed out some of the corners to those curved pieces, and now we're going ahead and we're placing a floor. Another thing that you'll notice is that I am using a base wood foundation here. I do find for myself that the wood foundation is probably the easiest material to build in, if I'm being completely honest. One of the reasons why is that I like all of my floor prints and stuff to go in the same direction, and when you build things in wood, it confirms that everything's going in the same direction with as much as it can be here. As well as just, you can save your blueprint. You can always save your blueprint in a base. It's best to save it in base materials, because if you do that, then when you go onto a new world and say you want to rebuild something, if you use some recipes and stuff that you will unlock later on, then you won't be able to actually build it. So building in wood and saving the blueprint in wood is one of the biggest tricks to kind of keep in mind when you're building. So now you could see we did a little bit of circular editing on the one side. We added a little bit of circular foundations for some variety, and then we also added a couple of pathways as well with the quarter pieces. I do love the quarter pieces. One thing to keep in mind with them, though, is that the build limit when you're placing something away from a foundation that is not a foundation is 3 pieces. And it doesn't matter how big or small those pieces are, it will not let you build if you hit that limit. So you can attach it to the opposite side. So the one area I did have a foundation a little closer, so it was okay and it recognized it. But we'll see a little later on, I run into that issue of having to basically place from a different direction. And that's just one of those building rules that exist in the game. You learn it over time, but it is something to keep in mind. So here you can see me taking away the paint of the foundation and putting it back on. So one of the things that's really important, like I said, is to make sure that all of your boards are going in the same direction. So when you go to paint the tile, whatever you're planning on painting, that the orientation is going to be the same. But here, what I've also found with building in Once Human is if you try to paint like a floor on a foundation, and then you go back and try to paint the foundation underneath. So say you have this glass pack, which we're using right now, which has the cement paint essentially, and you want to paint that, but you already have this wood print on top. Sometimes it'll tell you that it's just not possible. And that's just a reality. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. So you're just better off doing the base build in the wood, then doing the foundations, and then placing what other additional prints you would like to place. So here you can see I'm just kind of messing around with the floor print. I do really like this this wood print that we have. It's from one of the outdoor sets that gives you a lot of really beautiful just decor. It's got a really nice fire pit. It's got some chairs and a couch. It's got some plants. We're going to use some of it in this build as we kind of move on. The little pebble print is also from that set as well, which is really cool. So I tried to stick mostly to the glass set as well as the outdoor kind of patio set, but it will kind of go back and forth because I am lucky and I have access to a lot of different sets to build. So again, you can kind of go and do whatever you like, whatever materials you like. I don't have a lot of the in-game blueprints unlocked, so I just kind of had to stick with a lot of the purchased things that I have. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. And here I realized that I wanted my pool to be able to be a little bit deeper so we could dive a little bit. We end up in a position where we kind of can dive, but not as much as I would normally do. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to lower the floor. You can see me lowering the foundation here, which is essentially making the water deeper, right? So if you're new to the game, you're trying to learn some building skills. When you go into that territory relocation, which is what we were just in, you can hold down your Alt key and then scroll if you're on mouse and keyboard to change the elevation of your build, which is something that sometimes is a little bit finicky, but when it works, it's really cool because you can kind of make a lot of things work that wouldn't normally work by doing that. But here we're kind of getting to the point where I start to see a little bit more of a vision. I have a tendency of putting my character constantly in the way, so I had to move my character again. And we're going in it just to get a little bit more of a gradation of the steps. I'm adding in those quarter foundation platforms there. So it's just going to give us some variety. Eventually, we will be cutting out some of that to add in some additional features, which I think end up really cool. But one of the coolest things I think, again, about building is that you can start in one place or have one idea of what you want to do. And I don't know about y'all, but for me, it usually ends up completely different. So this is, it's definitely, it's close to what I was thinking. I think it definitely got a little bit more adventurous than I had initially intended. But I think that's the beauty of building. And I think one other thing I'd like to mention about building is that one of the reasons why I wanted to do tutorials is that I do consider myself a builder. I love building in any game. Any game that has a mechanic for building is my vibe. It's one of the reasons why I loved this game. See, okay, so I'm testing out the water here. You can't fully dive, but you can swim a little bit more. And then we've got a shallower end, which you'll see we're eventually going to turn into kind of a hangout area. But it's still better than what I had initially intended. So here I'm like, oh wait, can you put these in the water? And you can. Now some of them are going to be a little too deep. So that, yeah. I actually don't know if you will drown if you sit on that couch. I should have tested that out. But it turns out that this foundation is actually perfect height. So if you sit on this little foundation here with the couch, then you can just have your head right above the water. And basically, it's kind of like hot tub vibes, but you're in the actual pool. So this is when I start to bring in another set. So I do love the tree set. It's one of the more recent packs that's come out. I think that it is just a really great option to add more detail to your builds. It is definitely worth it if you're looking for a couple of like key packs to get. I'd say the outdoor set that has this umbrella and the wood print that we're using, the stones on the bottom of the pool that we're using, some other furniture we'll see a little bit later on. That pack, the glass pack, and then this tree pack are amazing packs that you can get in the game that will give you so much building variety. Again, there are ways to do this stuff in base game, and I will be doing more base game builds in the future. But if you have the ability to have, you know, access to these packs, I highly recommend those three. I think they're probably some of my favorites when it comes to building. Now we start to realize that I may or may not have placed myself too close to a TP, which is problematic. They are technically referred to as strongholds in this game, so it could be a specific location, it could be a TP. That little area where I just tried to place that one fence is not going to let me do it. It's just, even though my house is technically past that, it's just not going to let me do it. So we do eventually place some trees to accommodate that, but it's just an oversight on my end. I did not test before I started to build, but it's a good learn lesson thing. Okay, so here is probably where the build started to go a little more past basic because I really wanted to make this fountain work. I threw it out there and we're gonna slowly start expanding off of the original base that we did. So I'm like, okay, let's get this beautiful fire pit. Of course, when you delete the foundation, it does delete that little path, but we'll go ahead and we'll put it back later. There we go. So we've got it back there. It's just all about support. Sometimes things support that shouldn't. Sometimes it all works properly, but the more you play, I accidentally deleted that. But the more you play, the more you get to learn. I will say I am definitely someone who has a tendency to delete by accident a lot. So if you do that too, don't feel alone. And then here, another thing I was mentioning when doing this build is that the circular pieces, although I love them and I love the variety that they bring to builds, they will always go the directions that they're going to go. And you're never going to be able to perfectly match up if you do have something like a hardwood, like a straight hardwood that I'm using here. Just keep that in mind. You just kind of have to accept, you got to pick your battles. Pick your battles with the different things. I hope one day that they give us an option to change the orientation of the print of the floor, but for right now, you just got to accept it. Also, no build's complete without a llama paca. The llama paca is a little toy that I did put there on the chair. If you want to hear anything about the llama paca and history of llama pacas, feel free to stop by my Twitch stream where we do talk about them very often. Okay, so now we're getting into the bane of my existence, which is this fountain. And it does take quite a bit. So the orientation of the camera can be difficult, the orientation of the item, and then we have the free placement versus the grid placement. So using caps, I believe it's caps lock, is going to give you the option to either freely move it or to snap it to a grid. Sometimes one works better than the other. So you can see I was using the free placement with the tree there a little bit, and it wasn't having it, and then it was. There's just like a sweet spot. So sometimes if you want to make something work, you have to just play around with it a little bit. So keep that in mind as well. Here we're fighting with the floor. So this is going to go on for a little bit. I really just want that walkway down, and I want this fountain here. I think the fountain just adds a nice little feature. I like to imagine the fountain as a hot tub. Obviously, it's not a hot tub. So I'm going back and forth. I'm going to be removing and taking things back and placing them back down and trying different pieces. But I think that that's one of the cool things about this game is that because there is a lot of versatility in the building, there are always options of ways to get things to work. Sometimes it's not going to work the way you originally imagine it, but it does. Most things are eventually possible. See, here you can tell it's still getting kind of angry at the fountain. So basically what's happening is the fountain is colliding with the foundation. So I found out, I believe here, yeah, here we figured out the sweet spot. So if we brought the staircase out just one, and then we got these quarter tiles in, we finally have the staircase fully placed down. We went ahead and placed that print. Here's another one of those weird situations where something will work one way but not the other. I was like, oh, we'll do a little L couch here. Let's place a tree. Why isn't this working? Move couch, place tree. Tree perfectly fine. Couch goes exactly where I wanted it. Was literally in the same spot. I was trying to put the tree in that corner. The couch was in the same corner. Yeah, sometimes you just have to move things around. So just try to be really patient with yourself as you're learning how to build in general in any game and also just in this game. But yeah, so we finally got that little area worked out, which I really like. And here I just kind of started adding some variety. I think that variety is really important when it comes to building. You know, kind of swapping in different glass pieces. They're all glass pieces, but they have different styles to them. Variety and asymmetry are two of the biggest things I would say help with building. They help with just making an interesting build. When you see a build, you walk into someone's build, you're just like, man, I really like that. And I think that those are two things that really help with that. So here we are just adding some lights. We are on a lunar server, so everything's red. So it looks a little dark, that's why. But yeah, we're adding some lights in these different areas. You can waterlog the lights as well, which is really cool. I love that ability, and we're coming to the end. So there's a ton of other stuff that I could have done to this build. There's a lot of other options of things that you can add, you can take away. You can totally do this in a base build. You don't need all of these packs in order to build this. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that the sped up video was a little bit more helpful if you didn't have enough time to watch the longer one. There is a longer one with my initial commentary. But thank you again, and don't forget to click that subscribe button.